How's it going, y'all? And welcome back for another episode of the Advanced Climbers section of this series. So today I'll be going over tools, tips, tactics, mindsets, things like that to help you as an advanced climber be able to perform at your best or to help stop being in a plateau. Whatever it is you need, hopefully I have a point here that helps cover it. So without belaboring the intro, I'll go ahead and get started. Number 29, chunking. As climbing becomes more advanced, there are more complexities added to it, more things that we have to account for throughout every single movement. It's no longer just grab and pull, it is grab, twist, pull, keep following through, keep tension. When I hit this hold, don't let my body sag away. Things like that, and that's a very simple version of that. But if you try and think about all those things at the same time, like all of those little steps, you're going to fall apart. So this trick that we can end up using is this concept of chunking. How do we take all of these little inputs and summarize them into one sensation, one feeling, or maybe even one cue? For some people, a cue might even just be get tall, tall posture, drive through the legs, pull through the arm. Whatever cue works for you is fine. Some people really like to think about these physical sensations, so they might pick apart all these little details that they want to add in, and then when they run the beta through their head, they're like, okay, I want to do this. It's an amalgamation of all of those little things added together. Early on, it's very challenging to mix in more and more things, but the longer you do it for, the easier it becomes. Also, a lot of these skills become a little more unconscious, a little more automatic. And so it's even easier then to just kind of filter them in. It's not this thing that you have to be overwhelmingly thinking about. Number 30, don't get stuck. Cross moves. Maybe everyone's least favorite thing, or the thing that everyone's like, oh, I'm really bad at cross moves. So some years ago, I was climbing with Will Anglin, and he gave someone this tip, this idea of don't get stuck. Whenever we do cross moves, positions become even more important than with standard moves. As an example, let's think about a cross move where we cross from one side pull to another. You've got the start position where you're laying back this side pull. This feels pretty good. Side pulls being on this side feels great. Then the end position, which is laying back this side pull, which also feels good. The idea behind don't get stuck is that middle zone between this side pull and this side pull is where everything's going to feel terrible. If you watch people do cross moves, what we unfortunately naturally do is we fall into this middle zone, stuck between the two positions where nothing feels good, and we're convinced we're not strong enough. We're convinced we're just bad at this, where realistically, we either need to stay in the early position or get ourselves all the way into the end position. If we stop in the middle, we're in trouble. There are a couple of reasons why we don't like cross moves. For one, our brain doesn't like crossing midline. So when your arms reach across the middle of your body, being crossed up like that, our brains don't really love. Another thing is we're just not strong like that. This is not a strong position at all, being reaching across your body. And then the last reason is cross moves are so much more dependent on positioning than most other moves. There's some good methods for making cross moves a little easier other than just this broad concept of don't get stuck. And if that's something you're interested, let me know. Comment down below. Number 31, there are rules. Now, this is a phrase that I tell myself fairly often, and it has to do with grades. You've been climbing long enough that you've got a feel for what grades should be. I know grades are vague and all that, but the idea behind there are rules is a grade can only be so hard. A V6 is a V6. Sure, there's a little wiggle room here and there, but if it feels like V8, that's on me. I'm doing something wrong. If I'm climbing a 12B and I hit a crux and I'm like, ooh, this feels like a V6 boulder problem, I am doing something wrong. And the phrase I like to use is, there are rules. And that just it's my touchstone to bring me back and say, okay, it's only allowed to be so hard. And it's a funny thing to say out loud, but there's an example from the other day. I was coaching a client, and we were working on some slab problems. And a World Cup climber came over and was climbing next to us. And they were just going down the wall, sending everything. And they get to this V6 and they go up and they fall off the top. And I'm, focused on coaching, but obviously I'm still looking over there because World Cup climber. And to be fair, my client was kind of doing the same. They were like, they seem really strong. Are they strong? I was like, yeah, they're really strong. So this World Cup climber falls off the top of this V6 and we're continuing with our session. And I see them fall like 4 or 5 times off the same last move. Then they walk off, come back with a different pair of shoes, and they try it a few more times. They're alternating, soft shoe on one foot, stiff on the other. They switch. And it probably took them close to 10 goes to send this V6. They do it, they walk off, and now they're like circuiting double-digit boulders, crushing everything. My client was like, wow, that looks really hard. That must be heinous. I hadn't climbed it. I was like, yeah, it must be. Finish up my session, and I've got like an hour before my next coaching session. I'm going to warm up. I want to go try that V6 now. So I go over and I go to try it, and it goes exactly like how you think. I fall off the last move, and it feels heinous. And so I start trying a bunch of different iterations. I'm like, oh, maybe this is like very compy, like World Cup style. Maybe this is this or that. And I got overwhelmed pretty quick. I was like, this is the hardest V6 ever. And then I paused and I remind myself, there are rules. This is V6. Come on. So I took a step back and I assessed it as this is a V6. And I realized, I was like, I'm climbing V6 to get to this last move. How would a V6 climber do this? And after having that mindset, it took me maybe 20 seconds to see the option. And it was so obvious. It was a very standard, ironically, like a rock style move. Like this is the kind of move I've done on sport climbs outside all the time. And it's maybe like a V3 move. But it was so easy to look at it as like, it was on a wall covered in comp style boulder problems. It was easy to be like, oh, this is a paddle. This is this or that. And turns out it wasn't. It was just a normal V6. Grades can be a really contentious topic, but I think something that can really help is just thinking, okay, am I the problem? Starting there really helps. We naturally like to push it off on the grade must be wrong, or everyone else's consensus must be wrong other than mine. But if you start with you, the thing you can control, I think that ends up defaulting into being a better way to go. And it's going to bring you more success in the future and hopefully less frustration. Number 32, eliminating flaws or gaps in your sphere of influence. So in the last couple of videos, I've kind of talked about this concept of your sphere of influence. Essentially, with your arms and your legs, how far can you reach? And also, how strong are you in these ranges? Early on, it was just about, can you understand how effective you are at different ranges? Because that's really helpful for problem solving. Now the goal is, find these gaps where you're not very good. Are you really good at having feet out and wide, but you can't high step to save your life? That's a problem. If we're looking at cross moves, can you cross kind of across your body, but maybe when you actually have to lean over, you can't, you're just like a Lego figure that can't really tilt back and forth? Let's fix that. It's important that we can use every inch of range that we have through our hips and through our shoulders in order to climb harder. Most of us get stuck in this kind of Goldilocks zone of, well, I like my feet kind of low, but not really too low and not too high. And I like holds that are in my box, as people like to say. And without realizing it, we can trap ourselves by not developing this sphere of being able to reach out. Like, can you be strong here? Can you be strong here? Are you strong all the way across? We want to be moderately strong, if not very strong, in any position that we get in, because rock climbing is getting a lot weirder the better you get. So you need to be strong in all positions if you want to succeed. Otherwise, you're just going to be kind of stuck in these Goldilocks boulders, and everything's going to feel like it doesn't fit you correctly, or things are all going to feel like the feet are too high, or the feet are always too low, or the hands are too wide. Where really this is Like I said last time, can we reflect this back on ourselves? Are the feet too high, or am I not flexible enough? Are the moves too big, or have I not developed enough strength on big pull-throughs and using momentum? This is such an important and crucial step for advanced climbers to address. Number 33, full body climbing style versus finger strength intensive style. So this is kind of a can of worms, but very generally speaking, there is a spectrum that all of us exist on that ranges from pure finger strength style to pure body strength style. Finger strength style allows you to leverage your finger strength in order to be more efficient with your body. Where on the other hand, body strength style is using your physical strength of your entire body to put you into positions and shapes that allow you to take more weight off of your hands. You do not have to have strong fingers to have a finger strength dependent style. Some people are just told that this is what good style looks like, and so they mimic it, even though they have very weak hands, and it shows in their performance. If we're looking at high-end climbers who perform in each of these styles, I would say on the body strength side, we have Jimmy Webb and Aiden Roberts. Even though they're very different in the way they climb, they both maximize their finger strength by using their body strength. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we have Adam Ondra and Alex Magos. It's more common to have sport climbers be finger strength dependent. Realistically, though, even though those are my examples, most of the highest level climbers can toggle back and forth, and they can really slide up and down that spectrum of being able to be more body style versus finger style. If you want to see an extreme example of this finger strength dependent style, I would say go look at teenage Adam Ondra. He literally just climbed like he had hooks for hands. Like, he didn't use his body, he used his mobility a lot, but his actual upper body he very rarely brought into play. I mean, and to be fair, the guy climbed like 15B doing that, so it can still work out well. You just have to have the hardware to be able to apply this well. It's not uncommon to see people who have very strong hands for the grade that they climb be a little too far on the finger strength dependent spectrum. Like, they don't know how to use their body strength to leverage for better positions, and they will believe that they climb with very good technique, but you could almost look at these as two different class types. Like, this is its own world of technique, and this is its own world of technique. I think that in order to be the best climber that you're capable of, it's important that we learn both of these styles fairly well. Some of us will have a natural tendency towards one or the other, and certain styles of climbing also lend themselves to one or the other. But the more you can pick apart both and really understand them and not think of technique as this one method, the better off you're going to be. I'll end this little conversation around finger strength style and body strength style with a question. Early on in climbing, we are told, climb with straight arms and twist. And we're told that this is a more efficient way of climbing. And I agree with that. It is more efficient. However, it's not more efficient for your hands. Climbing with straight arms and twisting add more load to your fingers than other viable options for doing moves. So here's the question. Why is it more efficient? In what ways is it more efficient? And there's more than one answer here. Because it is. There's a reason that beginners are told straighten your arms and twist early on, and there's a reason why it works for them, like why immediately it kind of clicks. And there's several reasons. I would love for y'all to answer down below. Why is that? What are the different efficiencies that you pick up from this, knowing that it's less efficient on your hands? Number 34, the end position of a jump. This essentially is just understanding the difference between jumping normally and pogoing. Whenever we jump, a lot of us think about jumping as this explosive, powerful display of athleticism. And in a way it kind of is, but honestly in rock climbing we don't jump that far most of the time. Really, it's this game of precision and positioning. So it's less about can you jump far enough, but can you jump just far enough and into the right place? So what I want y'all to think about for right now is the difference between jumping normally and pogoing to be able to jump into position, because both do completely separate things. When we dyno how we normally will, so if I'm reaching right hand, my right leg is driving, anytime I move sideways or diagonally, it puts my body on a tilt, which means when I catch a hold, my body's going to swing to find plumb line, and it's going to keep swinging. Sometimes that's beneficial. There are times where swinging after we latch something will actually make it easier. However, if we pogo to get to the next hold, our body stays vertical the entire way. Sometimes that's beneficial. Very generally speaking, pogoing won't get you as far as a normal jump, but you're trading off the initial power for a better position. This is something I intend on digging into in the near future. I think it plays a much larger role than we really give it credit for anytime our feet are cutting. And some people are really biased towards pogoing. They absolutely love it. And then some people just never use it. There are so many really cool tricks to pogoing that make it very beneficial for even technical vertical sport climbing. It's something I'm going to dig into here soon. But for now, learn how to pogo, start playing with it, and applying it to your climbing. Number 35, J-swoop versus straight line momentum. Essentially what this means is whenever you create momentum, let's say if we're going upwards, mostly we kind of rock back, create a little bit of a backswing, and then go upwards. So kind of straight line up and down. A J-swoop, which is what I call it because I don't know what else anyone else calls it, but it's this idea of whenever you rock over sideways and then jump up from there. Oftentimes this can be really useful if you have a foot that's really high up into the side. This is set all the time in the gyms where it'll be, a good side pull foot that's really high and you have to rock over onto it and then dynamically jump off of it. So it's kind of this J-shaped jump. This is really useful for whenever you have to get over onto a foot before jumping, but there are a lot of downsides. The biggest one is now you're having to control this weird diagonal swing as you come back to a hold. Sometimes that diagonal swing is useful. A lot of times it can backfire. Knowing when to use this and when not to use this is very important. And some people even default to only J-swooping every time they create power because it does load your jumping leg very well. So if you are someone who always rocks back and forth and jumps kind of in this swooping motion, you might need to learn how to be able to create these straight line jumps. And for people who only jump straight up and down, you might need to learn how to kind of swoop back and forth. Number 36, J-swooping into the wall to be able to increase foot pressure. Whenever we're climbing on bad smears or even just steep walls, a lot of times it can be really hard to put enough pressure into the foothold. If you push, because if a foot is sloping down, if I push straight into it, it's just going to rocket me away from the wall. But if I don't push down hard enough, I'm not going to be able to get much force into it. And if I have a 45-degree smear and I try and just push straight down on it, I'm going to slide. So how do I create force into the wall, into this foothold, without just jettisoning myself off of the climb? And the answer is this J-swoop motion into the wall, to where we rock back and then bring ourselves forward, rock in to where we can load this foothold. As our body's moving inward, we then can press up, and so we end up just kind of swooping up the wall in that way. This is how a lot of people naturally dyno. They kind of dyno in this arc towards the wall, but you can do this for a 5-inch move. If you're having to use really bad feet, really bad smears, and you need to weight them heavily, being able to drive into them without just like smashing the wall or like kicking yourself off the wall, it becomes this very critical skill, and it's fairly delicate in order to make it work well. Number 37, hiding underneath holds. Basically what I mean by this is the lower we get underneath holds, generally speaking, the better they feel. Like with a sloper, the further underneath it you get, the better it is. Even with crimps. I mean, think about a hangboard. You get directly below it. That's why a lot of people can hang really small holds on a hangboard or little micros because they're hanging directly below them. But the second they have to get out in front of them on a climb, it feels dramatically harder. Learning how to keep yourself under holds for as long as possible and create power and momentum from underneath holds becomes this really useful skill that lets you use worse holds than you could otherwise if you were just hanging out away from the wall. Number 38, and last one of the video. This is what I would call the climbing athletic stance. In most sports, there's this concept of an athletic stance. If you think about a volleyball player or a shortstop or a tennis player who's about to receive a serve, what do? They're all in this kind of sort of bent over, bent knees position to where they've got their weight on their legs and they can move really athletically and quickly in any direction. If they're just standing up tall and limp noodle, they're not going to go anywhere. They need to be able to react quickly. In climbing, we have kind of a similar thing. And for us, it is elbows slightly bent and then tall chest. So kind of almost exaggerating, arching the upper back. And this puts us in this very advantageous position to be able to be very explosive and powerful. Now, I don't think this is how you have to climb all the time, but understanding how to get into this position is really useful, especially for sport climbers. Sport climbers are the worst they just kind of get into this little turtle shell thing and they kind of hang out and roll around with straight arms, and then they get to a big, powerful move, and it just looks forever away. Where if they can go from here to kind of bent arms, tall chest, they're suddenly going to feel so much closer, so much more powerful. They're going to be able to get the muscles of their back actually engaged and going. So embracing this climber's athletics stance and knowing how to toggle between that and maybe something a little more passive that's a little more relaxed and saves energy is super useful. Straight arms can be good, but straight arms aren't doing hard boulder problems. Thanks for following along with this last episode. If you have any questions about things I talked about, any comments, or if there are any points that I made that you want to see elaborated into a full-length video, let me know. Leave a comment down below. That helps me to take all of these ideas that I have and kind of choose which ones y'all want to see first rather than just kind of shooting blind here. Leave a comment, let me know, and I'll see you around next time.